Silos Prime, a beacon of supposed neutrality shimmering in the velvet expanse of the cosmos, was a world gasping its last, its once vibrant ecosystems choking on the accumulated refuse of 1,000 starfaring civilizations, each seeking solace or profit within its failing atmospheric embrace. Amidst this slow decay, a brilliant human warp drive theorist, Dr. Jax Thorne, a man whose arrogance was as renowned as his intellect, and whose heart harbored a bitter, consuming vengeance, prepared to unveil a propulsion system so revolutionary it promised either salvation or swifter oblivion. Unseen by him, moving with a grace that belied her true purpose, was Lyra of Cybra, an alien emissary appearing as little more than a diplomatic attaché, yet carrying within her the genetic salvation for her plague-stricken species, and serving as a covert operative for a galactic council, tasked with observing humanity's volatile potential. Neither knew their paths were about to catastrophically converge, entangled by the audacious theft of the Chronos Disruptor, a precursor superweapon of terrifying capability, a theft engineered by shadowy biohackers with designs on a psychic amplifier that could enslave minds across the stars. The grand unveiling of Jax Thorne's experimental warp field projector was slated to occur within the shimmering, crystalline halls of Silos Prime's central conclave. The air thrummed with a mixture of anticipation and the low hum of atmospheric processors struggling to maintain breathable air. Jax, resplendent in a sharply tailored, dark Terran suit that contrasted with the flowing, iridescent robes of many alien dignitaries, paced before a massive holographic display. His presentation was meticulous, his voice resonant with the certainty of genius, yet an undercurrent of disdain for his audience. For the slow, ponderous councils and committees he believed had stifled true progress for centuries was palpable. He saw himself as a visionary, dragging a reluctant galaxy towards a brighter, faster future, whether it appreciated his efforts or not. His current focus was securing funding resources and, more importantly, a platform to finally eclipse the rivals who had, in his mind, wronged him and stolen from him in the past. Vengeance for Jax was a cold, meticulously planned dish best served at warp speed. Lyra watched from the periphery, her multifaceted cybrain eyes, currently shielded by subtle optical dampeners, to appear more conventionally humanoid, taking in every detail. Her official designation was a junior cultural liaison, a role that afforded her access without undue scrutiny. She found Jax Thorne fascinating and repellent in equal measure. His intellect was undeniable, the mathematics of his warp theory elegant, even beautiful in its audacity. But his demeanor the barely concealed contempt, the restless, predatory energy that clung to him, these were traits her people, the Cybrines, found deeply unsettling. Cybrines revered the natural flow, the interconnectedness of all things. Leadership among them was not a fixed mantle, but a current that passed fluidly to the individual, whose skills and wisdom best suited the immediate challenge. A consensus often reached through a subtle, shared psionic resonance. Technology, for Cybrines, was a tool, often a dangerous one, a necessary evil to be used with extreme caution and profound respect for its potential to disrupt the balance. Jax Thorne, in his ambition, seemed to embody the very imbalance they feared. Yet, her mission from the Galactic Council was to assess humanity's true potential, for good or ill, and Thorne was undeniably a significant data point. And beneath her calm exterior, a deeper, more personal urgency throbbed the engineered plague ravaging Cybra, her homeworld, a creeping death that only she, through a unique quirk of her genetics, held the complete biological key to counteract. Time was a luxury her people no longer possessed. The presentation concluded to a wave of polite, if somewhat bewildered, applause. Jax fielded questions with sharp, sometimes dismissive, precision. As the crowd began to disperse, a sudden series of piercing alarms shrieked through the conclave. Crimson lights pulsed, casting long, dancing shadows. A synthesized voice devoid of emotion announced a level 10 security breach, containment failure. Vault Omega compromised. Chronos Disruptor missing. Chaos erupted. Dignitaries scrambled. Security drones whirred into aggressive formations, and energy barriers slammed down, segmenting the vast hall. Jax, caught off guard, felt a surge of annoyance. This was an intolerable interruption. His moment, his triumph, was being overshadowed. Lyra, however, went unnervingly still, her senses, far more acute than her human guise suggested, analyzing the patterns of the lockdown, the direction of the security response. Vault Omega. She knew its location, its alleged impregnability. The Chronos Disruptor was a legend, a piece of precursor technology capable of localized temporal distortion, a weapon of unimaginable power. Then, the holographic displays, which moments before had shown Eris's elegant equations, flickered and changed. They now showed grainy security footage from Vault Omega's antechamber. Two figures, cloaked and moving with unnatural speed, were visible, disabling the outer defenses. As they turned momentarily towards a hidden camera, their faces were revealed, albeit briefly. One was unmistakably Jax Thorne. The other, its features subtly altered but still recognizable beneath the distortion, bore a striking resemblance to Lyra's diplomatic guise. Jax stared aghast. "That's impossible! I've been here! This is a fabrication!" His arrogance momentarily shattered by sheer disbelief. Lyra felt a cold dread seep into her. This was no random malfunction. This was a sophisticated frame-up. The precision was chilling. She saw armed silent security forces converging on their position, their weapons already leveled. "Dr. Thorne." Her voice was low, urgent, cutting through his shocked outburst. "We are in immediate and profound danger. They will not listen to reason." Jax, his mind racing, saw the trap closing. His reputation, his life's work, his very freedom all about to be obliterated by a lie. The vengeful part of him, so long simmering, flared. Someone had dared to use his image, to implicate him in something so crude, so beneath him. "They'll pay for this?" He seethed, but Lyra was already moving. "Later, Doctor. Survival first." She grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "There's a maintenance conduit behind the main display. It leads to the lower levels. It's our only chance." Before Jax could fully process it, she had deactivated a small, almost invisible panel, and was pulling him into the darkness beyond. The sounds of shouting and weapon fire erupted in the conclave hall they had just vacated. Their unlikely, unwilling alliance had begun, forged in the crucible of a spectacular lie. The hunt was on. The maintenance conduit was a claustrophobic nightmare of pipes, wires, and the cloying scent of ozone and recycled air. Lyra moved with a silent, fluid grace that belied the restrictive confines, her senses guiding her through the labyrinthine network. Jax, less accustomed to such undignified scrambling, grumbled and occasionally scraped against the metallic walls, his expensive suit suffering irreparable damage. His arrogance, however, quickly resurfaced as a form of defiance. "When I find out who orchestrated this," he muttered, his voice echoing slightly, "I'll dismantle their entire pathetic operation piece by piece." Lyra didn't respond, conserving her energy, her focus absolute. She could feel the vibrations of pursuit through the metal around them, the distant thud of heavy boots, the barking commands of silent security. They were not just fleeing, they were being actively herded. This realization sent a fresh chill down her spine. The framing was only the first step. The true culprits likely wanted them captured or eliminated, but perhaps not too quickly. They emerged gasping, into a deserted, dimly lit cargo bay on the station's lower periphery. The air here was thick with the smell of engine coolant and exotic spices from 100 different worlds. Huge, silent cargo containers loomed like sleeping giants. "We need transport," Jax stated, brushing dust and grime from his ruined attire with a grimace. "Something fast. Something untraceable." His mind was already calculating escape vectors, assessing potential ship classes. Lyra nodded, her gaze scanning the bay. "The official docking bays will be locked down. We need something less official." Her eyes settled on a battered, mid-sized freighter. The Stardust Drifter, its hull patched and scarred, its transponder likely as fluid as its ownership history. "That one," she said, pointing. "It looks like it's seen its share of discreet departures." As they approached the freighter, a new threat materialized. From the shadows between the containers, figures emerged, not silent security, but something far more sinister. They were clad in dark, segmented armor that seemed to ripple and shift, and their movements were unnervingly fast, almost insectoid. Their faces were obscured by visors that glowed with a faint, sickly green light. Biohackers. The Krell scourge, Lyra realized with a sickening certainty. Their reputation preceded them, masters of genetic manipulation, creators of bespoke plagues and hideous biological war constructs. The very antithesis of cybrine reverence for life. So, the puppet masters reveal themselves. Jax snarled, his hand instinctively going to his side, where a weapon would normally be. He was a theorist, not a soldier, but the raw fury of being manipulated was a potent stimulant. The Krell operatives didn't speak. They advanced, their strange, multi-jointed limbs, carrying them forward with predatory speed. One of them raised an arm, and a stream of viscous, Green liquid shot out, sizzling as it struck a nearby bulkhead, eating into the metal. Lyra reacted instantly. "Move," she yelled, shoving Eris towards the freighter's ramp, which was thankfully partially lowered. She ducked under another corrosive stream, her movements astonishingly agile. For a junior cultural liaison, she fought with the practiced skill of a seasoned warrior. She grabbed a loose metal strut from a discarded crate and used it as a makeshift staff, deflecting a blow that would have incapacitated Eris. Eris, recovering his balance on the ramp, saw Lyra single-handedly holding off 3 of the bioengineered assailants. His arrogance warred with a grudging admiration. He wasn't entirely useless in a fight his youth had involved some compulsory self-defense training, but this was beyond his experience. He scrambled up the ramp and into the freighter's cockpit, his fingers flying across the activation panel. The ship was old, its systems archaic by his standards, but its core functions were robust. Engines whined, then coughed to life with a shudder. "Lyra, get up here," he yelled into the ship's internal comm, his voice strained as he fought with the sluggish controls. Below, Lyra disarmed one Krell with a swift, precise strike, then kicked another back, but a third lunged, its pincer-like hand grabbing her arm. She cried out a brief, sharp sound. The Krell's grip was like iron. It began to drag her away from the ramp. Seeing her predicament, something snapped in Eris. The cold, calculating theorist was momentarily eclipsed by a raw, protective instinct he hadn't realized he possessed. With a roar of frustration, he slammed the freighter's primary thrusters to full, even before the docking clamps had fully disengaged. The ship lurched violently, tearing free with a shriek of tortured metal. The sudden acceleration threw the Krell operative off balance, its grip on Lyra loosening for a crucial second. Lyra wrenched her arm free, leaving a strip of her diplomatic robes behind, and threw herself onto the rapidly ascending ramp, just as Eris managed to retract it. The Stardust drifter, protesting loudly, blasted out of the cargo bay, narrowly avoiding a collision with an automated loading crane. Warning lights flashed across Eris's console. Sealand pursuit vessels were already scrambling, their comm channels buzzing with angry demands for surrender. Lyra stumbled into the cockpit, clutching her arm. Her breath came in ragged gasps. "Close," she managed, her usually calm demeanor ruffled. "Too close," Eris agreed, his knuckles white on the controls as he navigated the chaotic space lanes around Xylos Prime. He spared a glance at her. Her sleeve was torn, and he could see angry red marks on her skin where the Krell operative had gripped her. "Are you all right?" The question was out before he could stop it. A rare crack in his usually impervious facade. Lyra met his gaze, a flicker of surprise in her multifaceted eyes. "I will be. Thank you, Doctor." She then looked at the rapidly dwindling image of Xylos Prime on the main view screen. "They knew we would be there. They knew our faces. This was meticulously planned. The Krell Scourge, they are not known for such subtlety. They usually prefer overwhelming biological assaults. They wanted the Chronos Disruptor," Eris said, his mind already piecing things together. "And they wanted us out of the way, or perhaps as convenient scapegoats while they made their own escape with it." He scowled. "But why frame us so publicly? Why not just take the device and disappear?" "Perhaps," Lyra mused, her brow furrowed in thought, "the disruptor isn't their only objective. Or perhaps they needed a significant distraction." She touched her arm gingerly. "They are more organized, more insidious than the council briefings suggested." A new layer of urgency entered her voice. "The council needs to be warned. My people need to be warned." But how, when they were fugitives, hunted by both official forces and the deadly Krell? The Stardust drifter, old but resilient, plunged into the relative anonymity of deep space, leaving Xylos Prime and its immediate pursuers behind. But their ordeal was far from over. A new set of proximity alerts began to chime on Eris's console. 3 smaller, faster ships, bearing no official insignia, but radiating an unmistakable predatory intent, were closing in on their position. The Krell Scourge were not giving up so easily. The pursuit was relentless. The Krell ships were sleek, needle-nosed craft, clearly designed for speed and aggression. They hounded the Stardust drifter through asteroid fields that glittered like scattered diamonds on black velvet, their weapons fire scoring occasional, jarring hits against the freighter's already stressed shields. Eris, pushed to the limits of his piloting skills, executed maneuvers that would have made a seasoned fighter jock proud, his earlier arrogance now channeled into a desperate, focused competence. He cursed the freighter's sluggish response, its outdated targeting systems, its general lack of offensive capability. If I had my own ship, he gritted out, wrestling the controls as a particle beam seared past their cockpit, this would be a very different engagement. Lyra, despite the pain in her arm, proved to be an invaluable co-pilot. Her cybrain senses, far sharper than human norms, allowed her to anticipate the Krell pilot's moves, to spot weaknesses in their formations, and to identify safe passages through treacherous debris fields that looked like certain death on the scanner. Bank left, Dr. 40 degrees. There's a gravitic shadow behind that large asteroid. We can use it to break their targeting lock for a few seconds. Her voice was calm, a steadying influence amidst the chaos. Her fluid approach to problem solving, a hallmark of cybrine leadership philosophy, began to impress Eris, despite himself. When a Krell missile disabled their primary shield generator, it was Lyra who, after a moment of intense concentration, rerouted auxiliary power from the life support system, a risky move to create a temporary, localized energy screen around the engines. A necessary evil, she murmured, echoing her culture's pragmatic view on technology, to ensure our continued existence. During a brief lull, as they hid within the dense metallic core of a shattered moon, the true turning point of their burgeoning, unwilling partnership arrived. One of the Krell ships, more persistent or perhaps more reckless than the others, managed to track them. It emerged silently from the moon's shadow, weapons charged. Eris, exhausted, reacted a fraction of a second too late. A concentrated blast of disruptive energy slammed into the Stardust Drifter's port side, ripping through the hole near the engine compartment. The ship bucked violently. Alarms shrieked. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into emergency red. Eris was thrown against his console, his head striking the viewport with sickening force. Stars exploded behind his eyes, then blackness. When consciousness returned, it was to a world of pain and disorientation. The cockpit was a wreck, sparks showering from ruptured conduits. A klaxon blared insistently, warning of imminent atmospheric failure. He tried to move, but a searing agony shot through his left side. He looked down. A jagged piece of metal, part of the wrecked console, was embedded deep in his ribs. Blood, dark and shockingly warm, was soaking through his already ruined suit. Lyra, he croaked, his voice weak. He heard a soft groan from the co-pilot's seat. Lyra was slumped over, her form still. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through his pain-hazed mind, a fear that had nothing to do with his own predicament. He reached out, his hand trembling, and touched her shoulder. She stirred, moaning softly. Eris. Her voice was thin. The whole breached atmosphere venting. He could feel the air thinning, the temperature plummeting. His vision was starting to tunnel. This was it. Trapped, bleeding out, about to suffocate in the cold vacuum of space. A pathetic end for a man of his intellect, his ambition. His quest for vengeance seemed utterly meaningless now. Then Lyra moved. With an effort that was clearly agonizing, she pushed herself upright. Her face was pale, etched with pain, but her multifaceted eyes, when they focused on him, held an extraordinary intensity. She saw the shard of metal protruding from his side, the spreading stain of blood. She saw the life fading from his eyes. A profound change came over her. The detached observer, the cautious operative, vanished. In her place was something fiercely protective, almost primal. She reached up, her fingers surprisingly steady despite her own injuries, and touched her own eyes. And then Eris witnessed something that defied all his understanding of biology. Tears, shimmering like liquid diamonds, welled in Lyra's eyes. But these were not tears of sorrow. They pulsed with a faint, internal luminescence, a soft, ethereal glow. She carefully collected these tears on her fingertips and, leaning over Eris, gently applied them to the horrific wound in his side. The moment her tears touched his ravaged flesh, Eris felt not a sting, but a strange, pervasive warmth. It spread outwards from the wound, soothing the searing pain, pushing back the encroaching cold. He watched, astonished, as the torn tissues around the metal shard seemed to knit themselves together, the bleeding slowing, then stopping. The light from her tears was absorbed into his skin, leaving behind a faint, silvery sheen. It wasn't just physical. He felt a strange sense of peace, a clarity he hadn't experienced in years. The bitter anger, the obsessive need for revenge that had driven him for so long, seemed to recede, replaced by a profound, overwhelming sense of connection. To Lyra. She worked with focused intensity, her breath misting in the rapidly chilling air. When she was done, the wound was still there, The metal shards still embedded her tears couldn't expel foreign objects of that size, but the bleeding had stopped completely, and the pain had subsided to a dull, manageable ache. She was clearly exhausted, swaying on her feet. Cybran biology, she whispered, her voice raspy. Our tears can heal. Accelerate cellular regeneration. Under specific emotional stimuli. She looked at him, her gaze deep and searching. I could not let you die, Eris. The use of his first name, the raw emotion in her voice, struck him more profoundly than the miraculous healing. He, Jax Thorne, the arrogant, vengeful warp drive theorist, had been saved by the tears of an alien woman he'd barely known for a solar cycle. And in that moment, staring into her luminous, exhausted eyes, he knew that something fundamental within him had shifted. The ice around his heart had cracked. Before either of them could say more, the Krell ship, emboldened by their silence, launched another attack. The impact was jarring, sending fresh showers of sparks. We need to get out of here, Lyra gasped, or that healing will have been for nothing. The immediate shared threat of death, and the profound intimacy of her life-saving act, forged a bond between them stronger than any steel. They were no longer just two fugitives. They were survivors, bound by an experience that transcended species and circumstance. Their forced proximity was no longer just a matter of survival. It was becoming something more. They had to work together, not just to escape, but to understand what had happened to them, and why. The Krell Scourge were still out there, and Silos Prime was undoubtedly broadcasting their identities across the galactic networks. They were truly alone together, against a galaxy that believed them to be villains. The Stardust Drifter, grievously wounded, but still functional thanks to Lyra's earlier intervention and Eris's desperate piloting, limped away from the shattered moon, its two occupants forever changed by the crucible of near death and unexpected salvation. Their escape from the Krell ambush left the Stardust Drifter crippled but spaceworthy, a testament to its rugged, if unlovely, design. Eris propped against a bulkhead, the metal shard still in his side, but the wound miraculously stabilized by Lyra's tears, directed her through a complex series of micro-jumps, utilizing his theoretical knowledge of warp mechanics to navigate through unstable gravitic eddies that would shred conventional vessels. Lyra, despite her exhaustion and the lingering pain in her own arm, proved an adept student of astrogation, her cybrine mind grasping complex spatial geometries with an intuitive speed that surprised him. The cockpit, once a space of terse commands and mutual suspicion, became a crucible of shared effort. They found temporary refuge in the cluttered, chaotic embrace of a rogue asteroid cluster known colloquially as the Graveyard of Empires, a drifting mausoleum of ancient warships and forgotten stellar follies. Here, amidst the silent, ghostly hoax, they could attempt repairs and, more importantly, try to understand the forces arrayed against them. Your tears. Eris began, his voice still rough, as Lyra carefully dressed the residual abrasion on his side with salvaged medical supplies. The metal shard remained a grim reminder of their ordeal. Extracting it would require proper surgical facilities. How is that possible? Lyra paused, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the dim light of the emergency lamps. Cybran physiology is unique. We are deeply connected to the emotional and biological energies around us. Certain strong emotional states can trigger biochemical changes. Intense compassion, a desperate will to preserve life, it can transmute our lacrimal secretions into a potent healing agent. She hesitated, then added, conversely, intense fear or rage can make our saliva toxic, a defensive mechanism rarely invoked. Eris absorbed this, his scientific mind trying to categorize to understand. Healing tears and toxic saliva. It was like something from ancient Terran mythology, yet here it was, a biological reality. And you used that for me, a human you barely knew. One who was, frankly, insufferable. A faint smile touched Lyra's lips. You were dying, Eris. My people revere life. And, perhaps your insufferability has certain, intriguing qualities when not actively directed at me. The shared danger had eroded much of his overt arrogance, revealing glimpses of the brilliant, driven man beneath. This was the opening Eris needed, a chance to bridge the gap his own behavior had created. Lyra, he said, his voice softer now, stripped of its usual hauteur. I owe you my life. What I said, how I acted on Xylos Prime, I was a fool. You were under duress, Dr. Thorne. She replied, though her eyes held a hint of warmth. As was I, though perhaps my disguise as a meek cultural liaison was more effective than your attempt at charming the financial council. He managed a weak chuckle. Point taken. But this framing the Krell Scourge. Why us? Why the Chronos Disruptor? It's a temporal weapon, incredibly dangerous, yes, but what could biohackers possibly want with it on that scale? Lyra grew serious. I have been accessing what remains of the Stardust Drifters Limited Galactic Network uplink. Most official channels are saturated with warrants for our arrest, but I also picked up whispers, data fragments from less reputable sources. She activated a small, salvaged data screen, its surface scarred but functional. The Krell Scourge, under a leader known only as Master Vex, have been linked to raids on several precursor archaeological sites. They aren't just stealing artifacts, they're seeking something specific, something to amplify psionic energy. Eris frowned. Mind control. That's usually the domain of charlatans and fringe cults. Not for all species, Eris. Some possess genuine potent psionic abilities, and Vex is rumored to be one of the most powerful rogue psionics in the Outer Rim. But even his abilities have limits. He seeks a psychic nexus, an amplifier. The legends speak of a precursor device capable of focusing and magnifying thought, of projecting will across vast distances. Eris felt a chill, and the Chronos Disruptor, I believe, Lyra continued, her voice low, it might be a key or a power source, or perhaps even a component necessary to activate this nexus. Or, it was simply the most valuable, high-profile item they could steal to create a smokescreen for their true objective, implicating notable off-worlders like yourself and a representative of a species known for its unique biology to muddy the waters. She looked at him pointedly. They might have known about my abilities. Perhaps even my true mission. Your true mission. Eris prompted gently. Lyra took a deep breath. I am not just a cultural liaison Eris. I am an operative of the Cybrian High Council, and by extension, an observer for the wider galactic concord. My primary objective on Xylos Prime was to assess humanity's potential ascension to the Concord. Your warp drive theory was a significant factor. She paused, a shadow crossing her features. But there is more. My people, we are dying. An engineered plague swift and devastating. It resists all conventional treatments. Our finest scientists believe it was custom designed to target Cybrian genetics. Eris stared at her, the pieces falling into place with horrifying clarity. The Krell Scourge. They created this plague. It bears all their hallmarks, a sophisticated, tailored biological weapon. And she touched her chest, I carry what our elders call the Serene Bloom, a unique genetic sequence, a natural counter-agent to the plague. It needs to be synthesized, replicated. I am, quite literally, my species' last hope for a cure. The weight of her revelation settled heavily in the cramped cockpit. Eris, who had been consumed by his own vendettas, his own ambitions, suddenly felt the sheer scale of Lyra's burden. Her quiet strength, her resilience took on a new dimension. She wasn't just fighting for her life. She was fighting for the survival of her entire civilization. The Galactic Council, Eris said slowly, they know about this, about you. Some on the inner circle do. My mission to observe humanity was also a covert way to reach out, to seek allies, resources, perhaps even a hidden research facility far from Cybra, where the cure could be developed without alerting the Krell. Her eyes held a deep sorrow. Now, I am a hunted fugitive, and the Krell know at least part of my value. They might not just want the Chronos Disruptor and the Nexus. Eris realized with dawning horror. They might want you, Lyra. For your genetic key, to control it or destroy it. This shared understanding of the stakes, of the true depth of the Krell's nefarious plans, solidified their alliance. They were no longer just running, they were now on a counter-mission. They had to clear their names. Yes, but more importantly, they had to stop Vex and protect Lyra. Over the next few solar days, drifting through the graveyard, they worked tirelessly. Eris, his intellect fired by the challenge and a growing admiration for Lyra's calm competence, managed to coax more performance from the Stardust Drifters' battered systems. He jury-rigged a new shield array from salvaged warship components, boosted the sensor range, and even managed to get a rudimentary cloaking field partially operational, using principles from his own warp theory. Lyra, in turn, shared more about Cybrian culture. She explained their concept of Ka'asha, the universal life flow, and how their fluid leadership emerged from sensing the needs of the Ka'asha and the individual best attuned to guide it. She spoke of vast, living bioships grown by Cybrian biosmiths, of cities that existed in perfect harmony with their planet's ecosystems. It was a stark contrast to the often rapacious, resource-hungry expansionism of many other galactic species, including, Eris had to admit, humanity. He found himself listening, truly listening for the first time in a long while. Her perspective challenged his ingrained assumptions about progress and the role of technology. He began to see that his drive, his ambition, while powerful, lacked a certain balance. A wisdom that Lyra seemed to embody. Romantic tension, subtle yet undeniable, began to weave itself into their interactions. It was in the shared glances across the flickering console, the incidental brush of hands as they worked in the cramped engine room, the quiet moments when they would share scavenged nutrient paste and stare out at the silent, star-dusted void. Eris found himself increasingly drawn to her quiet strength, her luminous eyes, the gentle cadence of her voice. Lyra, in turn, saw past Eris's abrasive exterior to the brilliant, passionate, and now surprisingly vulnerable man beneath. His fierce determination, once a source of concern, now felt like a protective shield. One evening, as they were charting a perilous course through a dense nebula to mask their energy signature, Lyra was attempting to interface her Cybrian datapad with the freighter's antiquated navigation system. She sighed in frustration. This technology, it is so aggressive. It fights every command. Eris, watching her, felt a pang of something akin to tenderness. Here, he said, moving closer. Let me try. Sometimes these old systems respond better to a firm, if slightly arrogant, touch. His hand covered hers on the control interface. A jolt, not entirely unpleasant, passed between them. For a moment they both froze. His thumb brushed the back of her hand, the skin cool and smooth. He could feel the faint thrum of her pulse. Her multifaceted eyes, wide and luminous in the dim light, met his. The air in the cockpit suddenly felt charged, thick with unspoken emotions. He could smell the faint, clean scent of her, something subtly alien and wonderfully alluring. He wanted to lean closer, with a visible effort. Lyra gently withdrew her hand. Perhaps your expertise is indeed required, Doctor. Her voice was a little breathless. Eris cleared his throat, feeling a warmth creep up his neck. Right. Yes. Expertise. He turned back to the console, his focus suddenly shot. He managed to get the system to respond, but his thoughts were no longer solely on navigation. They were learning to trust each other, not just with their lives, but with glimpses of their true selves. Eris shared stories of his past, the betrayals that had fueled his vengeance, the academic rivals who had tried to discredit his revolutionary warp theories. He spoke of a mentor long dead, who had believed in him when no one else would. Lyra listened patiently, offering not judgment, but a quiet understanding that soothed old wounds he hadn't realized were still so raw. She, in turn, spoke of Cybra, of its breathtaking beauty, now threatened. She described the communal sorrow of watching her people weaken, the weight of carrying their only hope. She revealed that Cybrian empathy was a powerful force, that they could often sense the emotional states of others, a trait that made deceit difficult and connection profound. This, Eris realized, explained the unnerving way she sometimes seemed to know what he was thinking or feeling. Their search for information about the Krell Scourge and Master Vex led them to a decrypted data cache, retrieved from a wrecked Krell scout ship they stumbled upon in the graveyard. The cache contained fragmented schematics of a massive device, an orbital platform designated Zero-Day Station, and disturbing references to a dormant power source of immense potential, something the Krell referred to as the Oracle. Oracle. Lyra breathed, her eyes scanning the data. The legends speak of it. A precursor AI, almost godlike in its capabilities, lost for millennia. If Vex could awaken it and use it as his psychic nexus, he could potentially control minds on a galactic scale. Eris finished, the implications chilling him to the bone. No more need for plagues or bioconstructs. He could simply command obedience. The stakes had just escalated exponentially. The Chronos Disruptor, Lyra's genetic key, the fate of Cybra, all of it was now dwarfed by the terrifying prospect of a galaxy enslaved by a single, malevolent will amplified by an ancient, unknowable intelligence. Their personal vendettas and survival instincts were now irrevocably tied to the fate of countless worlds. The graveyard of empires had given them shelter, but it had also revealed the path to a confrontation that could dwarf any conflict the galaxy had seen in eons. Their unexpected union was about to be tested in ways neither could have imagined. The decrypted Krell data pinpointed Zero-Day Station's last known coordinates, hidden deep within the treacherous, radiation-saturated currents of the Obsidian Nebula. It was an audacious location for any construct, let alone one housing a dormant precursor AI. The Krell Scourge were clearly moving to secure and activate Oracle. Eris and Lyra knew they had no choice but to follow, to somehow intervene before Master Vex could unleash his mind control plague upon the galaxy. The journey to the Obsidian Nebula was fraught with peril. The Stardust Drifter, despite Eris's ingenious repairs, was still a battered vessel. They navigated by instinct and raw intellect, Lyra's preternatural senses, detecting subtle gravitic distortions that warned of hidden dangers, while Eris's calculations pushed the freighter's patched-up warp drive to its absolute limits. The Krell were no longer actively pursuing them. Their focus had shifted to Zero-Day Station, but the galaxy at large still considered them dangerous fugitives. Every unidentified ship on their sensors was a potential threat. During one particularly long, dark transit through a void between stellar filaments, the isolation and the immense pressure began to wear on them. Lyra was unusually quiet, staring out at the endless starfield, a profound sadness in her eyes. Eris, watching her, felt his carefully constructed emotional walls continue to crumble. He moved to sit beside her, the silence comfortable now, not strained. Sebra must be beautiful, he said softly, not a question, but a statement. Lyra turned to him, a wistful smile touching her lips. It is, or it was. Imagine forests where the trees sing with the wind, their leaves shimmering with bioluminescent light that dances in harmony with the twin moons. Rivers of liquid crystal, mountains that float among clouds of sentient flora. Our cities are grown, not built, woven into the very fabric of the planet. We live with Kasha, Eris, not against it. Her description painted a vivid picture, a stark contrast to the sterile, utilitarian environments he was used to, or the decaying grandeur of Silos Prime. It sounds like paradise. It was, she whispered, the sadness returning. The plague, it stills the songs of the trees, dims their light. It turns the crystal rivers murky. It silences the Kaasha. Her voice broke slightly. I carry the memory of that beauty, and the hope of its return. But sometimes the weight of it. Impulsively, Eris reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were cool, but they curled around his, a silent acknowledgement of his gesture. You're not alone in this, Lyra. Not anymore. She looked at him, her multifaceted eyes searching his. Eris, your world, Earth. What is it like? He hesitated. Humanity had its own share of self-inflicted wounds, its own troubled history with its homeworld. It's complicated. Beautiful in places, scarred in others. We're a restless species, always striving, always pushing boundaries. Sometimes for the better, often not. He thought of his own relentless drive, the ambition that had often bordered on obsession. We value innovation, discovery, but we often forget the cost. Your warp drive theory, Lyra said, it is a great leap. It could connect distant worlds, foster understanding. Or it could accelerate conflict, allow tyrants to expand their reach faster. Eris countered, a newfound cynicism coloring his tone. Technology is a tool, Lyra. You said it yourself. Its morality lies in the hand that wields it. And in whose hands do you wish your theories to be placed, Eris? She asked quietly. He looked at their joined hands. In hands that understand balance. In hands that respect life. He met her gaze. Hands like yours. The intensity of the moment was palpable. The hum of the freighter's engine seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of their breathing. Eris felt an irresistible pull towards her, a desire that was more than just physical. It was a yearning for connection, for the understanding he saw in her eyes. He leaned closer, and this time, Lyra did not pull away. Her lips were soft, surprisingly warm, and tasted faintly of starlight and some exotic, unidentifiable cybrine fruit. The kiss was tentative at first, exploratory, then deepened as unspoken emotions surged between them. It was a kiss of shared sorrow, of desperate hope, of a profound and unexpected love blossoming in the desolate expanse of space. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the universe outside the viewport seemed a little brighter, a little less hostile. Lyra touched her lips, her eyes wide and luminous. A single, shimmering tear traced a path down her cheek. This time it was not for healing, but for an emotion so potent it had no other release. Eris. I know, he whispered, his own voice thick with emotion. He gently wiped the tear away with his thumb. It felt warm, vital. I know. Their bond, now undeniably romantic, solidified their resolve. They were no longer just partners in survival. They were fighting for a future they hoped to share. As they neared the Obsidian Nebula, its dark, swirling currents visible on the main screen like a cosmic bruise, they knew the Krell Scourge and Master Vex would be formidable opponents. Zero-Day Station, and the dormant Oracle AI within, represented the ultimate prize, and Vex would not relinquish it easily. Eris, using the Krell data and his own understanding of precursor technology, formulated a risky plan. Zero-Day Station is almost certainly heavily defended by Krell forces, he explained, pointing to a holographic schematic of the station. Direct assault is suicide, but precursor structures of this magnitude often have back doors. Maintenance conduits, emergency overrides, systems designed for automated repair drones. Oracle itself, if it is truly a godlike AI, might have protocols that even the Krell don't understand. Lyra nodded. Cerebrine infiltration tactics often rely on finding the unseen paths, the points of least resistance. If you can identify a potential entry point, I can get us through. Her skills as an operative, honed by years of covert missions, would be crucial. They identified a possible weakness in old, supposedly decommissioned telemetry relay on the station's shadowed underside, shielded from direct sensor sweeps by the nebula's interference. It was a long shot, but it was their only shot. As they prepared for the infiltration, a new urgency pressed upon Lyra. The plague on Cyber was progressing. She had received a tightly coded, desperate message from her people, slipped through a compromised Krellcom channel by a sympathetic agent within the Concord. Time was running out. The synthesis of the cure from her genetic key needed to begin immediately, but that was impossible while she was on the run. If they failed here, if Vex succeeded, Cybra was doomed regardless of her survival. This grim news only hardened their resolve. Eris found himself fiercely protective of Lyra, not just as the woman he loved, but as the bearer of her people's hope. His own quest for vengeance, which had once consumed him, now seemed like a distant, selfish folly. There were far greater things at stake. The Stardust Drifter, cloaked and running silent, slipped into the outer tendrils of the Obsidian Nebula. The radiation levels spiked and the ship groaned under the gravitic stresses. Ahead, barely visible against the swirling darkness, a monstrous shape began to resolve Zero-Day Station. It was vast, a city-sized orbital platform bristling with unfamiliar technologies, its surface crawling with Krell patrol ships. At its heart, Eris knew lay the dormant Oracle and Master Vex, waiting to unleash an age of psychic tyranny. Ready? Eris asked, his hand finding hers for a reassuring squeeze. Lyra met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and fierce determination. Ready. Together, they piloted the Stardust Drifter towards the station's underbelly, towards the slim hope of the telemetry relay, their love a fragile spark against the overwhelming darkness, their shared purpose the only weapon they truly possessed against the coming storm. The fight for love, for new life, and for the freedom of the galaxy itself was about to begin. The approach to Zero-Day Station was a masterclass in stealth and nerve. Eris, his fingers dancing over the helm controls he'd practically rebuilt, navigated the Stardust Drifter through a gauntlet of Krell patrols and automated defense grids. The station was even larger and more formidable up close, a jagged, asymmetrical structure that seemed to absorb the dim light of the Obsidian Nebula. Lyra, her senses heightened, called out minute course corrections, detecting energy fluctuations and patrol patterns that were invisible to the ship's damaged sensors. Her calm precision was a counterpoint to Eris's focused intensity. The cloaking device, jury-rigged from his own warp theories, flickered precariously, threatening to fail at any moment. They reached the coordinates of the decommissioned telemetry relay. It was a small, recessed aperture on the station's vast underbelly, almost completely obscured by a tangle of ancient, inactive conduits. That's it, Eris breathed, relief and tension warring in his voice. If the schematics are correct, this should lead to a network of service tunnels. Maneuvering the Stardust Drifter into position without alerting the station's myriad sensors was like threading a needle in a hurricane. Finally, with a soft magnetic grapple, they latched onto the hole near the relay. Donning environmental suits, the station's exterior was exposed to the harsh nebular environment. They prepared for the extravehicular activity. The shard of metal still embedded in Eris's side throbbed with a dull ache, a constant reminder of their journey. Once we're inside, Lyra said, her voice slightly tinny through the suit's comm, we need to locate the primary control hub for Oracle. Vex will be there attempting to interface with it. The Krell data suggested Oracle is housed in the station's core, protected by multiple layers of precursor defenses. Defenses that Vex is undoubtedly trying to bypass or subvert, Eris added. We need to assume he's made progress. Our best chance is to disrupt the awakening process, or if it's already begun, to somehow sever his connection to the AI. He checked the charge on a multi-tool he'd modified with sonic emitters. Subtlety first. Brute force if necessary. The airlock hissed open, and they stepped out onto the cold, dark hull of Zero-Day Station. The obsidian nebula swirled around them, a breathtaking, terrifying panorama of cosmic violence. They moved cautiously towards the telemetry relay. Lyra, with her innate grace, handled the zero-gravity environment with ease. Eris, while competent, felt clumsy in comparison. The relay cover was fused shut with age and neglect. Eris applied his sonic emitter, the focused vibration slowly loosening the ancient seals. With a final grunt of effort, he pulled the cover free, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel. "After you," he said to Lyra, a hint of their old banter returning. She slipped into the tunnel without hesitation, her suit lamps cutting a swath through the oppressive darkness. Eris followed, the confines immediately triggering a wave of claustrophobia he fought to suppress. The service tunnels were a maze, filled with the hum of distant machinery and the unsettling silence of dormant systems. They encountered automated sanitation drones, which Lyra disabled with quick, precise bursts from a low-powered energy pistol she'd salvaged, and ancient security sensors they carefully bypassed. As they moved deeper into the station, the architecture began to change. The utilitarian metal corridors gave way to strangely beautiful, crystalline structures, pulsating with faint, internal light, the unmistakable signature of precursor technology. The air, filtered through their suits, still carried a strange, metallic tang, an echo of alien energies. They found evidence of the Krell's passage, hastily cut access panels, deactivated precursor defense systems, and occasional discarded Krell weaponry. "They've been thorough," Lyra observed, her voice grim. Vex is not underestimating Oracle. Suddenly, a faint tremor ran through the station structure. A low, resonant hum began to fill the air, growing in intensity. It wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling, a pressure against their minds. "Oracle," Eris whispered, his eyes wide. "It's starting to awaken. Vex must be close to succeeding," Lyra urged, quickening her pace. "One need to hurry." The hum intensified, and with it came a wave of disquieting psychic energy. Eris felt a prickling sensation at the base of his skull, a whisper of alien thoughts trying to intrude. Lyra, more sensitive to psionic energies, pressed her hands to her helmet, a momentary grimace of pain on her face. "It's strong. Vex is amplifying it." They burst into a vast, cavernous chamber at the heart of Zero-Day Station. The entire chamber was a symphony of light and energy, intricate patterns flowing across the crystalline walls. In the center, suspended in a shimmering energy field, was a colossal, multifaceted crystal oracle. It pulsed with an inner light that seemed to mirror the birth of a star, and the psychic hum was almost deafening here, and before it, on a raised platform, stood Master Vex. He was a tall, imposing figure, his species difficult to discern beneath the complex cybernetic enhancements that covered much of his body. His face, visible through a translucent visor, was gaunt, with eyes that burned with a fanatical light. He was connected to Oracle by a series of glowing energy conduits, his hands raised as if conducting an orchestra of immense power. Around him, Krell-scourged bio-soldiers, heavily armed and monstrous in their varied forms, stood guard. "They're too late." Vex's voice echoed through the chamber, amplified by the station systems. It was a cold, sibilant voice laced with triumph. "Oracle awakens. And soon, the galaxy will know true order. My order." The psychic pressure redoubled. Eris staggered, clutching his head. The vengeful thoughts, the arrogance, the fear, all his raw emotions felt exposed, amplified, almost weaponized against him. He saw Lyra falter, her connection to the Ka'asha, to life, being twisted into something painful and chaotic by Oracle's raw, untamed psychic output, now filtered through Vex's malevolent will. This was it. The culmination of their desperate flight, their unlikely alliance. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, in this chamber, with this madman about to seize control of a power beyond comprehension. Eris knew that their carefully laid plans for stealth and subtlety were now useless. This would be a fight. A desperate, perhaps final fight. The air in the Oracle chamber crackled with raw psychic energy, and the imminent threat of violence. Master Vex, sensing their arrival even amidst his communion with the awakening AI, turned his head slowly, a cruel smile twisting his lips. The celebrated Dr. Thorne and the Cybrain anomaly. You have been persistent. A commendable, if ultimately futile, effort. Your reign of terror ends here, Vex. Eris shouted, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. The psychic pressure was like a physical weight, making current thought difficult. He raised his modified multi-tool, its sonic emitter whining at maximum frequency. Vex merely chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Rain. No, doctor. This is salvation. An end to chaos, to the endless, squabbling incompetence of 1,000 self-serving species. Oracle and I will bring peace. A unified peace, the peace of enslavement, Lyra retorted, her voice ringing with defiance despite the pain etched on her face. She drew her energy pistol, its beam narrow and precise. The Krell bio-soldiers, a grotesque menagerie of chitinous armor, razor-sharp claws, and dripping fangs, surged forward. The chamber erupted into chaos. Eris fired his sonic emitter at the nearest group of Krell, the high-frequency blast disorienting them, throwing their genetically engineered senses into turmoil. Lyra moved with lethal grace, her shots disabling Krell warriors with pinpoint accuracy, targeting vulnerable joints or optical sensors. But the psychic assault from Vex, amplified by Oracle, was relentless. Eris felt his carefully constructed mental defenses begin to crumble. Images of his past failures, his deepest insecurities, the faces of those who had wronged him, flooded his mind, fueling his vengeful instincts, but also threatening to overwhelm him with despair. He saw Lyra stumble, her hand pressed to her temple, her connection to the natural world, the Kaasha being violently distorted by Oracle's raw, untamed power. "Eris!" she cried out, her voice strained. "Is control, it's linked to those conduits! We have to sever them." Easier said than done. Vex was shielded by a personal energy field, and the conduits themselves crackled with dangerous energy. More Krell poured into the chamber, their numbers seeming endless. One particularly large, brute-like Krell, its skin like hardened leather, charged Eris, swiping with claws that could shear through plasteel. Eris dodged, the movement aggravating the wound in his side. The metal shard felt like it was tearing him apart. He needed an edge, something to break through the psychic miasma. His arrogance, his intellectual pride, he weaponized it. He focused on the intricate patterns of energy flowing between Vex and Oracle, analyzing them as he would a complex warp equation. There had to be a flaw, a resonance point, a vulnerability. Meanwhile, Lyra, fighting her own battle against the psychic onslaught and the physical threat of the Krell, found herself drawing on the deepest reserves of her Cybrian heritage. Her reverence for nature, for balance, was being violated by Vex's perversion of Oracle's power. A cold fury, righteous and pure, began to burn within her. She remembered her training, the fluid leadership of her people. Now was not the time for observation, it was time to act, to lead the charge however small. She saw an opening. One of the energy conduits leading to Vex pulsed erratically, momentarily less stable. Eris, the conduit on his left. It's fluctuating. Eris, seizing the momentary clarity, redirected his sonic emitter, focusing its beam into a tight, destructive pulse aimed at the conduit. The energy beam struck true. The conduit sparked, then exploded in a shower of incandescent particles. Vex screamed, a sound of pure agony, as the feedback loop overloaded part of his connection. The psychic pressure in the chamber lessened fractionally. Oracle, its light flickering wildly, seemed to recoil from the sudden disruption. "Yes," Eris yelled, a surge of adrenaline momentarily masking his pain. "Keep hitting them." But Vex recovered quickly, his face contorted with rage. "Insolent fools! You cannot stop the inevitable." He unleashed a focused blast of raw psychic force directly at Eris. Eris cried out as the invisible force slammed into him, throwing him back against a crystalline pillar. His head struck hard. His vision blurred. The multi-tool clattered from his grasp. The Krell brute he'd been fighting seized its chance, lumbering towards him, claws raised for the kill. Lyra saw Eris fall, saw the Krell monster advancing. Time seemed to slow. Her love for him, her fear for his life, the desperate hope for her people had all coalesced into a single, overwhelming surge of emotion. Her tears welled, not the gentle, healing tears from before, but tears that burned with a fierce, protective light. Simultaneously, a bitter, acrid taste filled her mouth, her saliva. The defensive toxin. With a defiant cry that was both a lament and a battle roar, she spat a concentrated stream of her now toxic saliva directly into the Krell brute's exposed optical sensors. The creature shrieked a horrifying, gurgling sound as the potent biological agent corroded its delicate tissues. It clawed at its face, disoriented and blinded, then crashed into a nearby console, which exploded in a shower of sparks. This act, born of desperation and love, had an unexpected consequence. The raw, focused emotional energy Lyra had unleashed, combined with the unique biochemical signature of her cybrain abilities, resonated with the awakening Oracle in a way Vex's forced control never could. The AI, ancient and vast, seemed to notice her, to sense the purity of her intent, the depth of her connection to life. Oracle's light shifted, softened. The oppressive psychic hum changed pitch, becoming less aggressive, more inquisitive. Vex, still reeling from the conduit's destruction, felt his control over the AI waver. What is this interference? He snarled, his attention momentarily diverted from Eris. Lyra pressed her advantage. She sprinted towards another conduit, dodging Krell attacks, her energy pistol blazing. Eris, struggling to his feet, his vision slowly clearing, saw what was happening. Lyra's emotional outburst had created a window. "The AI, it's responding to you, Lyra!" he yelled. "You're your life force, your empathy! It's disrupting Vex's control." He knew what he had to do. He no longer had his sonic emitter, but he had his mind, his understanding of complex systems. He scrambled towards the main console Vex had been using to interface with Oracle, ignoring the searing pain in his side. Krell soldiers tried to intercept him, but Lyra, fighting like a dervish, her every move precise and deadly, kept them at bay. Eris reached the console. It was a whirlwind of alien symbols and fluctuating energy patterns. But beneath the unfamiliar interface, he recognized the underlying logic of a command system. He began to input commands, not to control Oracle, but to isolate it, to sever Vex's parasitic connection completely. He was, in essence, performing emergency psychic surgery on a godlike AI. His arrogance, for once, was perfectly channeled into the belief that he could do this. Vex, realizing he was losing his grip on Oracle, let out a furious roar. He abandoned his attempts to reassert control, and instead focused all his remaining psionic power into a devastating attack aimed at Lyra. "If I cannot have Oracle, then you will all perish with it." A wave of pure destructive mental energy, black and crackling, surged towards Lyra. She braced herself but knew she couldn't withstand such a direct assault. Then, something incredible happened. Oracle, now more fully sentient and seemingly responding to Lyra's earlier emotional resonance and Eris's intervention, acted. A shield of pure, golden light, far more potent than Vex's personal field, snapped into existence around Lyra, deflecting Vex's attack. The AI was protecting her. "No!" Vex shrieked, his power spent, his connection to Oracle completely severed by Eris's frantic work on the console. The remaining energy conduits, linking him to the AI, withered and died. At that precise moment, Zero-Day Station, already unstable from the awakening AI and the battle raging within, began to shudder violently. Whole breaches appeared in the Oracle chamber, venting atmosphere into the void. Red alert klaxons blared, their sound almost lost in the cacophony. Life support was failing. "Eris! The station is breaking apart!" Lyra cried, the golden shield around her fading as Oracle seemed to conserve its energy. "Almost there?" Eris grunted, making one final desperate input into the console. With a chime of confirmation, Oracle's core crystal pulsed once, then its overwhelming psychic output subsided, replaced by a calm, steady thrum of immense, contained power. It was awake, but it was free. The Krell soldiers, their leader defeated and their psychic link to him severed, fell into disarray, some fleeing, others simply ceasing to function, their bioengineered minds unable to cope without Vex's direction. Vex, drained and defeated, sank to his knees, his cybernetic enhancements sparking and smoking. "This is not over," he wheezed, before a falling piece of debris from the ceiling struck him, silencing him for good. The immediate threat from Vex was gone, but Zero-Day Station was tearing itself apart. Zero-gravity conditions began to assert themselves in pockets as artificial gravity failed. Debris floated everywhere. "We have to get out of here," Eris yelled, pushing himself away from the console. He grabbed Lyra's hand. "To the Stardust Drifter! If it's still there!" Together, amidst the chaos of the disintegrating station, with Oracle now a silent, watchful presence in its core, they began their desperate race for survival, their love and partnership forged in fire and psychic warfare, their impossible victory against Vex, the first step towards a new, uncertain future. The climax had passed, but the escape was just beginning. The Oracle chamber was a maelstrom of shrieking alarms, explosive decompressions, and cascading system failures. Zero-Day Station was dying around them. Eris and Lyra, hand in hand, navigated the treacherous, debris-strewn chamber, their environmental suits, their only protection against the rapidly encroaching vacuum. Pockets of zero gravity made movement unpredictable. One moment they were scrambling over wreckage, The next they were pushed against the ceiling by a sudden gravitational shear. The service tunnels. Eris shouted over the din, pointing towards the passage they'd used to enter. It's our only way back to the drifter. They fought their way through the disintegrating station, the path back far more hazardous than their entry. Collapsing corridors, electrical fires, and the terrified, fleeing remnants of the Krell scourge created a nightmarish obstacle course. Eris, his side screaming in protest, leaned heavily on Lyra for support. Her strength, both physical and emotional, was a beacon in the chaos. During one harrowing moment, as they crossed a rapidly depressurizing gantry, the structure beneath them gave way. Eris lost his footing, his magnetic boots failing to find purchase on the buckling metal. He felt himself falling, tumbling towards a jagged rent in the hull that opened into the cold, star-dusted void of the Obsidian Nebula. Eris! Lyra's cry was sharp with terror. She lunged, her reflexes incredibly swift, and caught his outstretched hand, her grip like steel despite the bulky suit gloves. For a heart-stopping moment, they dangled, Lyra straining to hold his weight, the abyss yawning below. I can't hold, Eris gasped, the pain from his wound, exacerbated by the sudden jolt, threatening to overwhelm him. Yes, you can. Lyra gritted out, her face a mask of fierce determination. We face down a psychic tyrant and an awakening god AI! We are not dying in a maintenance shaft! Drawing on a reserve of strength he didn't know he possessed, fueled by her unwavering belief in him, Eris found a precarious handhold. Together, they hauled themselves back onto the relative safety of the remaining gantry, their breaths ragged, their hearts pounding. They finally reached the telemetry relay and the Stardust Drifter, which was miraculously still docked, though battered by flying debris. As they scrambled into the airlock and repressurized, the relief was so profound it was almost painful. Eris collapsed into the pilot's seat, his body trembling with exhaustion and agony. Lyra, after quickly checking the freighter's systems, rushed to his side. The shard? She said, her voice tight with concern, looking at the blood now seeping through his suit around the entry point. It must have shifted. We need to get you proper medical attention. First, let's get out of this death trap, Eris managed, his fingers fumbling with the Stardust Drifter's launch controls. The station was groaning around them, great rents appearing in its superstructure. Explosions blossomed across its surface like malevolent fireworks. With a final, protesting shudder, the Stardust Drifter disengaged its magnetic clamps and blasted away from the disintegrating zero-day station. Behind them, the colossal structure, once a monument to precursor ambition and nearly the seat of Vex's galactic tyranny, began to break apart, its pieces tumbling silently into the dark currents of the Obsidian Nebula. Oracle, the ancient AI they had inadvertently freed, remained within the station's core, its fate uncertain, though Lyra felt a strange sense of calm emanating from it, a silent acknowledgement, perhaps even gratitude. Once they were clear of the immediate debris field, Lyra took the controls, her piloting smooth and efficient. Eris, drifting in and out of consciousness, felt her gentle hands on his helmet, removing it. Her face, filled with an aching tenderness, was the last thing he saw before darkness claimed him. When he awoke, it was to the soft hum of a medical scanner and the cool touch of a diagnostic probe. He was in a small, clean medical bay. The throbbing pain in his side was significantly reduced, though still present. Lyra was there, her multifaceted eyes fixed on a monitor displaying his vital signs. She looked exhausted but relieved. Welcome back, Dr. Thorne, she said softly, a tired smile gracing her lips. Or should I say Eris? Lyra, he croaked, his throat dry. The shard. I managed to stabilize you further, she explained, using the freighter's limited medical kit and a little more cybrain ingenuity. She gestured to his side. The shard is still there, it's too deeply embedded for me to remove safely without causing more damage. But I've managed to contain the internal bleeding and accelerate the surface healing. You need a proper surgeon soon. He nodded, trying to sit up, but she gently pushed him back down. Rest. We're clear of the nebula. I've plotted a course to a neutral medical station on the fringes of Concord space. It's a few days' journey at our current speed. Silence settled between them, filled with the unspoken emotions of their shared ordeal. We did it, Eris said finally, a note of disbelief in his voice. We actually did it. Vex is gone. Oracle is free. Lyra sat beside him, taking his hand. Yes, we did. Her gaze was distant for a moment. I felt Oracle as we left. It was aware. And not malevolent. It seemed curious, almost grateful. A godlike AI with a newfound curiosity, Eris mused. What will it do, I wonder? That, Lyra said, is a question for another time. For now, we survived. She squeezed his hand. And our names, they are being cleared. While you were unconscious, I managed to transmit a secure data burst, including Vex's own logs from Zero Day and testimonials from Oracle's energy signature that corroborated our story to a trusted contact within the Cybrian High Council and the Galactic Concord. The truth about the Chronos Disruptor, about Vex's plans, about our innocence, it's spreading. Relief washed over Eris, so potent it almost brought tears to his eyes. His reputation, his freedom, restored. But it felt different now. Those things, which had once been paramount, now seemed secondary to the connection he had forged with Lyra. And Cybra? He asked, his voice filled with concern for her people. A radiant smile, the first truly joyful one he had seen from her, lit up Lyra's face. My contact confirmed. With the data I sent before, and now with Vex eliminated, and the threat to me lessened, a Cybrine science vessel is already en route to Rendezvous with us at the medical station. They will have the facilities to begin synthesizing the cure for my genetic key. There is hope, Eris. Real hope for my people. He smiled back, sharing her joy. That's wonderful, Lyra. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, with the immediate danger past, their bond, forged in the crucible of shared peril and sacrifice, felt stronger, more profound than ever. He looked at her, at this extraordinary alien woman who had saved his life multiple times, who carried the hope of her species, and who had, against all odds, captured his arrogant, vengeful heart. Lyra, he began, his voice thick with emotion, what we faced, what we did. I wouldn't have made it without you. Nor I without you, Eris. She replied, her luminous eyes gazing deeply into his. Your courage, your brilliance, even your stubborn arrogance. At times they were essential. She leaned closer, her breath warm on his cheek. We are an unexpected union, across the stars. Fighting for love. He whispered, completing the thought, our new life. Their lips met, a kiss not of frantic passion born of danger, but of deep, abiding love, of shared triumph, and of the promise of a future they would now face together. The external crisis was resolved, their names cleared, and the path ahead, while still uncertain, was now illuminated by the light of their connection. Their personal choices, their willingness to trust and fight for one another, had not only saved themselves, but had potentially altered the course of galactic history, freeing an ancient AI and giving a dying species a chance to live again. The echoes of Zero Day Station would resonate for a long time, but for Jax Thorne and Lyra of Cybra, the most important resonance was the one they found in each other's hearts. A few months later, sunlight, or rather, the carefully calibrated, full-spectrum illumination of a state-of-the-art terraformed habitat streamed through the expansive viewport of the newly inaugurated Thorne-Lyra Institute for Interstellar Studies. Located on a neutral moon orbiting a peaceful binary star system, the institute was a gleaming testament to human ingenuity and Cybrine wisdom, a place dedicated to the ethical exploration of the universe's deepest mysteries. Jax Thorne, no longer the vengeful, arrogant theorist, but a more contemplative, though still fiercely brilliant, director, stood beside Lyra, watching a new class of diverse students, human, Cybrine, and a dozen other galactic species engaged in a lively debate in the central forum below. The metal shard had been successfully removed, leaving a faint scar he now considered a badge of honor. His revolutionary warp drive theories, once controversial, were now being developed at the Institute, not for conquest, but for peaceful exploration and connection. Lyra, radiant and serene, was no longer just an operative or a carrier of hope. She was a leader, a diplomat, and a co-director of the Institute. The cure for the Cybrine plague, synthesized from her genetic key, was working. Ships bearing the antidote were reaching the farthest corners of Cybrine space, and reports spoke of forests beginning to sing again, of crystal rivers clearing, of the Kaasha reasserting its vibrant pulse. Her people were healing, and their gratitude towards Lyra, and by extension, towards Eris and humanity, had forged a powerful new alliance. They seemed so eager, Lyra murmured, her hand finding Eris's, so full of hope. They are the future, Lyra, Eris replied, squeezing her hand. A future we fought for. A future where understanding can overcome fear, where cooperation can achieve what arrogance cannot. The Galactic Concord had officially exonerated them, even hailing them as heroes, though both Eris and Lyra shied away from such titles. The truth about Master Vex and the Krell Scourge had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, leading to a renewed vigilance against bioengineered threats and rogue psionics. Oracle, the precursor AI within the remnants of Zero-Day Station, remained silent for now, a watchful enigma. Some feared it, others saw it as a potential ally. The Institute had already dispatched a preliminary, cautious research probe towards the Obsidian Nebula, under strict ethical guidelines Lyra herself had helped draft. Their relationship, born amidst chaos and betrayal, had deepened into a profound and abiding love. They were partners in every sense, their strengths complementing each other, their differences enriching their shared life. Eris had learned humility and the value of balance from Lyra. Lyra had learned to embrace the potential of technology when guided by wisdom and compassion, and to trust in the often unpredictable, yet resilient, spirit of humanity. Do you ever miss it? Eris asked quietly, his gaze sweeping over the peaceful scene. The danger? The adrenaline? Lyra smiled. There are different kinds of adventures, Eris. Building this institute, fostering understanding between species, watching life flourish. These are challenges enough for me. She leaned her head against his shoulder. And I have you. That is the greatest adventure of all. He turned, cupping her face in his hands, his eyes filled with a love that was vast and unwavering. And you, my brilliant, courageous Lyra. Their kiss was a promise, a reaffirmation of their unexpected union, a testament to their fight for love and new life across the stars. The Thorne-Lyra Institute stood as a symbol of that promise, a beacon of hope in a galaxy still fraught with peril, but now, thanks to their actions, a little brighter, a little more connected. The future was unwritten, full of mysteries to explore and challenges to overcome, but Eris Thorne and Lyra of Cyber would face it together, their love a constant, guiding star, proving that even in the deepest darkness, the most unexpected connections could spark the brightest light, and that true strength was found not in vengeance or power, but in the courage to love, to heal, and to build a better future. One star, one heart, at a time. Their journey had been a testament to the enduring power of connection against all odds, a love story written across the cosmos, echoing the channel's very core and unexpected union. Across the stars, fighting for love, and forging a new life for themselves and countless others.